Okay. So today the first topic that we will cover is how to how, why to configure transactions in SSIS, or how to do it. So if you want to use transactions in your SSIS package, so how you can do it. So uh, I'll show you the need why we might require to go for transactions. So let's say this is our package. Okay. Now you when you are executing the package, or when you're running the package and see in the data flow task, there are so many tasks. Now your package might fail in any of these tasks. Let's say your package fails at this point, OLEDP, while inserting the data in OLEDP destination. But before it inserts the data in OLEDP destination, a lot of uh, things it performs. Um, Now, what happens is, if you do not enable transactions, uh, when you're running the package, and let's say it fails in this task, the tasks before that, let's say you're doing some update, delete before inserting, and your package fails while inserting, but you have done some updates and deletes before inserting the records. Now, so your package has done the job partially, though it has not completely performed its function, but partially it has completed its function. Let's say 50 to 60% it is done, then it is failed. So in such a scenario, most of the times what you want is, you want the entire thing to be rolled back and you want to rerun your package successfully. You don't want to run the things partially, right? So in that case, that is where transactions come into picture. So if you enable transactions in your package, what happens is, let's say if the package fails at a particular point, the tasks which are completed before that task, though all those tasks are rolled back. So in that case, you don't have to worry much about, the partial job which has already been done. So that is the use of transactions. Now, how you can do transactions is like, um, so this is, I would say, one of the reasons why people might use a sequence container. So earlier, like what we had explained is, like there is not much use of the sequence container, and it is mainly used to to group the tasks. But let's say if you want to configure transactions in your SSIS package, then sequence container is handy because what it does is it groups your tasks, and you can enable a transaction for that group of tasks. So let's say in this package I want to enable a transaction so that in case if it fails at this point, if it, let's say it fails at this point, it rolls back the earlier tasks which are completed. So in that case, what I will do is, so first I would take a sequence container. What I will do is I will not modify this package. I will take a copy of this package. So where some in SSIS, what you can do is you can take, let's say you want to reuse one package, you can take a copy of that package and you can paste it. So you can see that I have taken a copy and I will work on this package. Now let's say first what I'll do is I'll take a sequence container. Okay. Now in the sequence container, I'll copy Control C and Control V. So this will copy and paste the task. Control C and okay. And what I will do is I will not use these tasks, so I will delete it, and here I will disable it. Okay, right click, and if I don't want to use it, I can disable the tasks. Okay. Now I want to configure a transaction in this sequence container so that these two tasks run within a single transaction. So then what I will do is, there is a proper, let's say I right click on the sequence container and I go to properties. So this is the properties, let's right click and properties. Okay, now this is the properties window for the sequence container. And here in this properties window, there is this transaction option property. Now see, there are three options for transaction option. One is supported, one is not supported, and one is required. Now when you choose the required option, what SSIS will do is, for this container, SSIS will start a new transaction. Okay, uh, and if you choose supported option, then if there is already an existing transaction running, that task or container will join that transaction, but if there is no transaction, it will not start any transaction on its own. Required will start a transaction on its own, but supported will only join a transaction. It will not start any transaction on its own, and not supported will not join any transaction at all. So these are the three options. So for this container, I want to start a new transaction. So I will choose the option required. And
Just me, I didn't understand that what that means. Like, so this is a sequence container. So we can, what is that supported, not supported, that thing? Because
sup,
this is kind of one container that we can execute as usual way, right? So,
supported is like it not only for this container, any task or any container you take in SSIS, you will get for transaction, you will see these three options. So that is not only for this container. If you even take execute SQL task or you take data flow task at any level, this property has three options. So the three options is required is uh, if there is any ongoing transaction, it will it will use that transaction, it will join that transaction. If there is
what does that mean? Like, so like existing transaction means it's kind of a package separately, and
no,
that means that
let's say
you
in at sequence container level you start one transaction in execute. When you are running this execute SQL task, that transaction is already running, so you can use the execute SQL task. Don't need to start a new transaction, it can join that transaction. Similarly, data flow task, it doesn't need to start a new transaction, it can join that transaction. So,
what is that, start new and join means? Like, I don't
i-
understand, but so
so if
that means
there
like,
is an already, when you are executing a package,
uh-huh.
whether that package is running with a transaction or not, it can run with a transaction, it might not run with a transaction. So
Uh,
there
what does that transaction like, means that I didn't get much that
see,
term.
when you're writing a SQL script, there
Uh-huh.
when you try to start a transaction, you write begin tran, right?
Yes.
So if you do not write begin tran, will it start a transaction? It
No,
No,
no.
it will not start. Similarly, here, if you don't put required, it will not start a transaction.
Okay. So just like a SQL script, right? So
Right.
when you put that, okay.
In the background, it starts when you do required. In the background, it will start a transaction. But
Okay.
similar to SQL script, when you run an SQL script, if you want to start a transaction, you have to write the SQL script for starting the transaction, right?
Yeah.
Automatically it won't start.
Yes. Yes.
Similarly, here also, automatically it won't start. If you want to start a transaction, you have to put required here.
Okay. So then it's automatically start. So when the times come or an SQL agent start a job, then this will automatically start something like that, right?
Yes, right.
Okay.
Okay. So similar for execute SQL task, you don't need to start a new transaction because at the sequence container level, I have already started a new transaction. So execute
Mhm.
SQL task will just join that transaction. So there it will, you can use supported only. If you use not supported, then execute SQL task will not join that transaction. It will not, if it fails, if data flow task fails, then execute SQL will not roll back. Okay, so
Yeah.
but if you choose supported, then it is using that transaction. So in case this fails, this will also be rolled back. Okay, so similarly in data flow task also, you will for transaction option, you will use supported. So let's say you have 5 tasks here in sequence container. You have 5 data flow tasks. So for every task, you will use supported, and at the sequence container level, you can use required. So what will happen is, for this sequence container, a new transaction will start, and for all these tasks, that transaction will run. So in case if any task fails, the task executed prior to that will be rolled back. In in
Okay.
in case if nothing fails, everything is successful, then at the end of this container, the transaction will commit. So that transaction will end. So in for let's say you have you use another sequence container in your package. For this container, there are another 5 tasks. So when this container will run, you can use required and you can configure another transaction. So you can have multiple transactions in a single package. So let's say you have 4 sequence containers in one package. So for 4 sequence containers, for each sequence container, you can start one transaction, and all the tasks within that container will use that transaction. And in case when it is successfully all the tasks are completed, then that transaction will end. If it is not successfully completed, if there is some error, then that transaction will be rolled back. So that is why we use transactions in SSIS.
So transaction task level, right?
Yes, task level or at the container level. So for a container also you have transactions for each task also.
So if
You,
we have a couple of or more than one sequence containers, we have to use the transaction option, right? Either
it,
required or
it,
supported.
it depends on you. If you don't want to use transactions, yeah, it all depends on the developer. So
Okay.
if you don't want to use transactions, you cannot you can not enable it. So
Mm-hmm.
don't use the required option. Then it will not start a new transaction at the container level. And
Okay.
or else like even in a particular transaction, if say let's say for one task you don't want it to execute within a transaction, then you can choose not supported. And if you choose not supported, then that task will not run within that transaction. So it all depends on the developer how he or she configures the package.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. It's good.
So this is
But if the transaction is at the task level, what is the use of the sequence container then?
sequence container is like let's say for 3-4 tasks. Okay, for 3-4 tasks you want one single transaction. So how you will do it if you don't have the sequence container for all those 3-4 tasks? You want one single transaction to execute. For another 3-4 tasks, you want another transaction. So how you will do that without the sequence container? So
I was saying if the transaction is on the task level, let's say execute SQL task is a transaction, we don't use the sequence container, right?
yes, but then that for execute SQL task, there will be one single transaction. For data flow task, there will be another transaction. They will not be a part of single transaction. Okay. So this will have a separate transaction. This will have a separate transaction. In case this fails, this will roll back only the tasks in the data flow task. This will not roll back the execute SQL task because execute SQL task is not a part of that transaction. So it depends on what granularity, at what level you want the transaction to work. If you want the transaction to work for the tasks in control flow, then you can use it is not like there is nothing mandatory that you have to use a sequence container and configure the transaction here. If you want, you can not use a sequence container and configure the transaction at each task level also. That also you can do. There is It all depends on what your requirement is. Depending on your requirement, you will develop and enable the transactions based on your requirement. So there is nothing mandatory requirement that in order to use transactions you have to use a sequence container. If you don't need the use of sequence container, you don't use it. The reason why I said to it is easier to implement using sequence container is that using that container you can group the tasks in one single transaction. So that is why. If you want 3-4 tasks to be executed within a single transaction, then sequence container is helpful. If you want each task to be executed in a separate transaction, then you don't need a sequence container. Okay, so it all depends on your requirement. Okay, so this is one of the like how you can configure transactions in your package. So the next topic that we would discuss is how we can configure the ETL configuration in your SSIS packages. Let's say when you have developed a few SSIS packages, and you have deployed it to a catalog. You have also created jobs, and every day you are running those jobs in production. So there should be some kind of logging, right? Like when the packages are executed, how many packages are executed, when is the start time, when is the end time, and how many records you got from the source, how many records got inserted in your destination. So some kind of logging you require, right? Otherwise, you are running, let's say, packages every day, but there is no logging of that activity. Then you cannot track what is the ETL going on every day in the server. So that is why you need to do the logging of the ETL packages that you have developed and deployed. So for this logging purpose, we have um, you develop a framework which is known as the ETL framework. And in this framework, we have some tables, and we use these tables to log the different things in the packages. Let's say your packages run so every day it is running once. So every day you will have a different patch ID. Then you can log the package name, and the start date and end date, when the package starts and when the package ends, for each container, like how many records were there in the source, how many records got inserted in the destination. So these things you uh, we log in our day to just to keep a track of our day-to-day ETL activities. Also, if there is while running the package, if there is any error, if the package fails and there's an error, so usually we have an error log table where we log the errors occurred. So there we can check, which package has failed and what was the error due to which the package failed. So this kind of logging we usually we perform in our server when we deploy our packages in the server. So I'll show you how we can do this kind of logging activity. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay. So, if for logging the ETL packages, what we'll do is we'll use the ETL configuration table, and you can find this the MDA file for where you in OneDrive where you have the AdventureWorks and AdventureWorks data warehouse. There you have the MDF file for the ETL configuration table as well. So you need to attach that MDF file, and if you have already done it, you'll see the ETL configuration table in your SQL server. So in OneDrive, where you have the AdventureWorks DW files, there you will have the MDF file for ETL configuration as well. So you need to attach this database to your SQL server. Now, once you attach this database, you'll see that this database has these following tables. One is this package log. So in the package log, we are logging the status of the any package that we run. We log the status of the package. The run IDs, let's say it's an identity primary key column. So every day there's a unique run ID, and there's the package name status, whether it was success or failure or in progress, start time and end time, and the package execution UID. These things had logs. Then we have a container log. So this is at the container level. So within each package, there can be multiple containers. So you log each container and the run ID for that container and the container name, how what is the status of that container execution, what was the source record count, how many records were extracted from the source in that container, how many records were inserted in that container, and how many records were updated, how many records were ignored. Then the start time, end time, and the package execution UID. So this is the container log, and error log is nothing but uh, if while executing the packages, if any error occurs, then that information will be inserted in this table. So the run ID, the container ID where the error occurs, the error date time, the container name, the package name, the error code, and the error message. So all these things are recorded in the error log table. So if any error occurs, and in this ETL configuration also, how these tables are the data in these tables are loaded is these tables use these two stored procedures. If you see here, there are two stored procedures here. The log package details, if you look here, these are the two stored procedures which do the logging in these tables. So in the log package details, if you see, this stored procedure, this logs the package details in the package log table. Okay, and this log container details, this stored procedure logs the data in the container log table. Okay, so we execute these two stored procedures while doing the logging. So I will now show you an example how we can use these stored procedures and these tables to log the data for in a particular package. So you will use this logging mechanism. Let's say I will show it for one package. Let's say you want to log each and every package, right? So this mechanism you need to implement in each and every package.
So is these stored procedures are standard, or we have to modify it case by case?
No, that is also like here we have uh, implemented it like that. The stored procedure logs the data in this table. So you can also, while doing a logging, you can also, use an execute SQL task and write an insert statement to insert into the table directly without running the stored procedure. So here it is configured like that we call the stored procedure and pass the parameters, and automatically that it inserts the record in the table. So but that is like usually because sometimes the logic might not be one is simple insert statement. There might be two three statements which you want to run before doing the logging. So that is why we have the stored procedure. But if it's a simple insert statement, you can also do it directly. Like you can run an execute SQL statement and insert the log directly in the table without using any stored procedure. That also you can do. So it is not nothing mandatory. It is just how we have configured.
Okay.
So let's say here in this package only, first I need to, let's say I need when I'm running this package, I need to log the package details, right? The package name and the package ID, and the package start time, the package end time. These things I need to log in the package log table. So here we have a package log table. So I want to log the package details in this table. So I need this connection, right? ETL configuration, because this is a different connection, a different database than AdventureWorks DW and this one. So I need to use a new connection manager. So for that, for connecting to the ETL configuration database, I will create a new connection manager. And see, I will use this database. So you can see here that I have configured this connection with for this particular database. Now first, when I start the package, I need to log in that package details in that package log table. So for that, I will use an execute SQL task. Okay, one thing is that we will for doing this logging activity, we will use in our SSIS folder in OneDrive, under material there is one ETL scripts folder, and here there is an ETL scripts file. So we will be using the script in these files. So let us open it. So we will be using these scripts. Okay. So here first, while first starting the package, it will insert data in their package log table that this package has started. Okay, so for that, what we need to do is connection. I would take the ETL configuration, this connection, and in the SQL statement, I would this is nothing but the stored procedure. This log package details. This is the stored procedure. So if you look at the stored procedure, what it does is it inserts a package log in this table where and the run ID is nothing but the identity column or the primary key in this table. So the run ID will be automatically generated. The rest of the things you will insert. So if you look at this package log table, you can see here that the run ID is an identity column which will automatically be generated, and the rest of the things you'll have to insert. So this task will the input parameters for this task will be the package name and the package UID. These will be the input tasks, and the output will be the run ID. So if I go here, okay, now in SIS, execute SQL in SIS, this question mark is nothing but it stands for the parameter value. Okay, and the first question mark stands for parameter 0, then the second question mark stands for parameter 1, like that. So that is the sequence. So if there are 4 question marks, first will be parameter 0, then parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3, parameter 4, like that. So that is how the SIS works. Okay.
So you said four question mark, right? But I saw only two
No,
over there.
I'm just giving an example. So let's say you're writing a script where you have 4 question marks. So which means that there are 4 input parameters starting from 0, 1, 2, 3.
So separate by the dot. I mean the full stop mark.
No, nothing is there.
There's a dot there, right?
No, there's a comma. So
Oh, it's a comma. Okay.
if you see
Oh,
here, there's a comma.
okay, okay. All right.
So here in log container details, you see there are 3. In the log package details, there are 2, but container details, there are 3. Here, when you're running this update statements, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So depends how many parameters you're using in your statement. If you're how many parameters you have, that is you're referring to those parameters using this question mark, and the sequence is like that. It starts with 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So you can use 5 parameters, 10 parameters. It all depends on your script, like how many parameters you will be using. Okay. So now you click on OK. Now first I need to create a run ID parameter, which I missed. So in this package I need to create a variable called run ID, which I need to use because the output of this package start task is the run ID. So it will give me the output as run ID, which is an identity column in the package rock table. But I need to store that value in a variable. So I will create a variable. So let's say this one, I'll delete it. Run ID is nothing but a batch ID. Like every day, let's say today, when you're running the ETL, the run ID will be different. Tomorrow, the run ID will be different. So based on the run ID, you can distinguish which load, like how many records were inserted on, or in which load the error occurred. Those kind of diagnosis or debugging you can do based on the run ID. So you can identify that which day the if you want to identify which days of load the issue happened, any issue happened, or you want to audit, then based on the run ID, you can identify. So the default value is 0, but as you can see here, when you run this task and when you run this package, log package details, you'll see here that it is capturing the run ID from package log, and it will output the run ID. So what I'll do is log package details is my stored procedure. So question mark other two input parameters. So what are the input parameters? The input parameters are the package name and the package UID. So here in parameter mapping, I will add two input parameters. Now the package name, you can, there's a system variable which gives you the package name. So you can use that. See, this is the package name. So input is this an input parameter. You can select the data type of the parameter. So package name will ideally be an varchar. And as I said that the sequence of the parameters and the name of the parameters is starting from 0, 1, 2, 3 like that. So I will name it 0. Okay, now this is the package name. Now second is the package GUID. Now that is also a system variable. In system variable we have something called parent container GUID. So this is nothing but the GUID of the package, which is automatically SSI. When you run a package in a server, SSIS automatically assigns this GUID to this package.
So what does
So
this GUID means?
GUID means this. It's an unique identification number provided by SSIS. So if you see here, see, this is the package execution GUID. It's an alphanumeric unique number which SSIS server assigns to the package. Like you won't. This is just used for logging. So it is not like you won't be manually, like obviously you won't manually write the GUID. It is just a system variable and SSIS automatically assigns it.
So do we have a function to, like, when we create the table, like any kind of a function to generate this key?
No, like it is unique for each package. So based on the GUID, you can identify which package, the issue is there. Like from the package name also you can do, but let's say you have two packages with the same name, but the GUID will be different for each package. So based on, it is like a package identification. So based on the GUID, you can identify the package.
Okay.
Okay. And in varchar, one. So this is how like 0, 1. If there will be another variable, then I would name it as 0, 1, 2. And here in my general, I will put another question mark if there would have been another one. So in this stored procedure, we are only passing two input parameters, so I don't need more than two. And result set will be this. When we run this stored procedure, it will return me the run ID. So which is a single row. So I will select single row here. And in the result set, I will get the run ID. So here you can see that these are the variables available. So run ID is the user variable. So whatever value is there in that variable, that will be my result set. Okay. So this is my, now I'll rename it to package start component. Now when I execute this package, automatically a log and record will be inserted in the package log table that this package has started. Okay, and it is running, and the start date will be the get date. So I will run this package. I think there was some other error. Okay, so I enabled the transaction, but my services is not running. So that is why this error message is coming. So I'll just, for the time being, I'll just change it to, for transaction, you need the MSD DC services. So I will just make it transaction option supported. Okay. So if you see the data flow task, 37 rows inserted. Okay. So if you look at the package log table, you will see that a new entry is inserted. See here in the package log table, you can see this is our new entry. This is the run ID. This is the package name. This is in progress because I have not configured the package end component. So the package has just started. So it has just logged in progress. The start time and end time I have not configured, and this is the package execution GUID. Okay, now if I configure the package end component, then this will update this record. Once this package is successful, it will update the status as success, and it will put an end time to the package. So how I will do that is that also we can configure. Okay. Now I have the package in task. Oh, sorry, I'll take an execute SQL task. Okay. In the execute SQL task, the connection type will be the ETL configuration, and in the SQL statement in the ETL scripts, if you see here, in the ETL scripts for the package end component, we will be using this the SQL script. So what it will do is it will set the status as success and put the end time as get date on that run ID for that particular run ID. So if you go to parameter mapping, you can select the run ID from here. It will be input, and long is like begin, and run ID, it's an integer value, so we don't need to change it, so we just need to make it 0. Okay, there's no update parameter. This is an update statement, so there is no result set. So if you see here the result set, we can set it as none and then click on OK. Package and Now if I run this component, first it will generate a run ID and update the package log, saying that it has started the package with the package name and status in progress. And then once the package is successfully completed, it will update that record with the end time and status as success. So if I run, so if you see here, um, so package log, if you see the status now, you can see here somehow it did not insert that data. Let me check. Uh, 01 run ID is this. I'll just truncate this table. Okay. Now there's no record. Let me run this package. That is a run ID variable, right? Let me see. The run ID variable. File name. We will make it as ETL configuration. DL. Now let's say I will execute this. So you can see here this run ID is captured and the ETL framework is the name of the package. Status is success, start time, end time, and this is the package ID. So this is captured in this table. Similarly, we can also capture the, like this, a sequence container. So inside the sequence container, we can enter a container start time and container end time, and we can also capture that how many rows were extracted from the flat file, how many rows were inserted in the table. So that kind of logging also we can do. So I'll show you how we can do that. Before that, I will just take a 10 minutes break and then I'll show you how we can log the container details. Any questions you have till now regarding what we have covered?
Yes. So, Indra, this is because of the stored procedure, right? So this is execute SQL task for logging application. Do
Yes.
we have a built-in SSIS function for this?
Built-in SSIS function means what you can do is, like in event handler, like there is something called see on post execute, pre execute. Like the post execute is after the package is executed, pre execute is before the package is executed. So in like you can create a post execute, pre execute, and you can perform the execute the query or a stored procedure here. But if you say that built-in task which will automatically do the logging, there are some options also available, but that is like see, if you create a table and if you to create a table and procedure, like you can do the logging based on your requirement. So it is more customized, I would say. SIS has its inbuilt logging, so that also I will cover. You can go to SIS and logging, and you can log your packages. There are different ways. There is Windows event log, there is XMLA log, lot of different 3-4 different ways you can log your SIS packages. So that option is there, but it is like a default way of logging, and usually people don't use it because people want to log in their own way. They want to log the information which they want. Okay, if you use the default logging mechanism, then it is not that useful to people. Mostly people want to do the logging, the want to log the information that they require. So that is why that option, the people don't use this option very often. They use they do the logging on their own.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm back. So, um, what we'll cover right now is we have already showed how to configure the logging when at the package level, when the package starts and when the package ends. But we can also log data at the container level. So when the container starts, when the container ends, how many records were extracted, how many records were inserted in the container. So those kind of logging also we can do. So I'll show you now how we can do that. So let's say for this container, I want to log those details. So I'll take an execute SQL task. Okay. So in the execute SQL task, what I need to do is, so here also the statement that I would execute is in my ETL scripts script, I will execute this stored procedure exec log container details when the container starts. So if you look at the container details stored procedure, you'll see here that it takes the run ID, the container name, and the package execution GUID as the input parameters, and the output parameters are output gives output at the container ID, and the run ID and the run ID and the run ID is the input, container ID is the identity column which is generated on its own. So if you see here, sorry. So if you see the container log table, you can see the container ID is an identity column and it is generated on its own. We'll capture the container ID and then put it in a variable as we did in case of run ID. So first we need to create a variable called container ID as similar to run ID. Okay. And I also have to create container name because earlier package name was a system variable and we used the package name from the system variable, but there is no system variable for container name. So container name, we have to create a user variable for it. String, and I can put some name here as sequence container, or I can write in the container like flat file load. The function which this container is doing. So in the execute SQL task, the result set is single row because it will give me the output of the container ID, and this will be the connection will be ETL configuration, and the SQL statement would be
Why we use container ID and the container name two variables?
because the ID and the name are different, right? ID will be an integered value, and it is an identity column in the container log. If you see here, if you see the container log table script, the container ID and container name, they are two separate columns in the table. Container ID is an int column, identity column, and container name, you can see this is different.
So each container get a unique ID.
Yes, right.
Because all the container information we load into one table like a container log, right? That's why I made
Yes,
it.
right.
Okay.
So each container will have a different ID. The let's say you have two containers in your package. So when you're running the package, the run ID will be same, but the container ID will be different for the two containers, right? And so based on that ID, you can distinguish that this container is different from this container.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So I will execute this stored procedure as a container start logic to log the container start details. So there are three input parameters. If you see now, what are the three input parameters? If you see this stored procedure, the three input parameters are run ID, container name, and package execution UID. So here, when you do parameter mapping, first is the run ID. So run ID is nothing but a user variable, and it is long, so you can keep it as 0. Then the next parameter is the container name. So container name would be in varchar or varchar also you can put one, and then the package UID. So this is a system variable which you can use. So parent container UID. In where okay. So this is the package UID and the result set will be the container ID. So so when I run this stored procedure, the output I will get, I will uh, load it as a container ID. And I rename this to container start. Okay. Now, let's say when you in the container end, if you see when you create the container end, and if you see the ETL scripts there, there is a source record count, inserted record count, updated record count, and ignored record count. In this package, there is no updated record count or ignored record count because there is no update or ignored happening. So we have the source record count and the inserted record count. So we'll configure that. So what we'll do is if you go in the data flow task, this is my flat file. So this from here I would get the source record count. So I will for that I will create 4 variables for the count. So these are the 4 variables for the counts. So now what I'll do is, so here I'll delete it and I'll take one row count transformation. Okay. So here I will get, from here I will get the source record count. Okay. And similarly, from here I will get the, before just inserting, I will get the inserted record count. Okay. Now I'll configure the package and container end task. So I will take another execute SQL task here. And if you see here that I'm up in when the container ends, I'm updating these information in the container log table. So here result set is none, and connection I'll take ETL configuration. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 input parameters I have. Source inserted, updated, ignored, container ID. So five input parameters I need to 3, 4, 5. And the sequence is 2, 3, 4. And parameters that I need is, first I need source record count, inserted record count. Source record count data type will be int only. Inserted record count. Data type will be long only, and then you have updated record count, ignored record count. Updated record count, ignored record count, and then the container ID, which is an identity column and which is generated in the container start task. Okay. Now if I run this package, okay. So if you see here, everything is successful, and if I look at the tables, you can see that a new entry is entered with success, start time, end time. And if you look at the container log, in the container log also, this is, I'll just do order by container ID. So you'll get the latest one by container. So this is the latest one, and you can see this is the container ID, run ID, the container name, and status success, the row record, source record count, inserted record count, start time, end time, and the package ID. Okay, so this is the information which you can log in your packages using this configuration. You can also do the logging as I said earlier using SSIS logging. So there are different options which I will show you by with the see here also. You can, there are different providers. So different type of logging mechanisms. You can log into text file, you can log into XML file, you can log into a trace file, you can log into Windows event log, you can log into SQL Server. There's a SQL Server database where you can log, and so a lot of options are there here. You can log the events which you're logging. Okay, on pre-execute, post-execute, which events you want to log, you can select it. And then these are the default logging mechanisms provided by SSIS. Here I am doing a the logging in a customized way based on the information that I require. But here, customization is less. So you have to use whatever, most of the things what you have to use is what SSIS provides you. So sometimes that is not what people usually like, because sometimes it is also more information than what is actually required. So in order to extract the exact information which you want, it is sometimes difficult. That is why people don't, I have not seen people using the SIS log provider much. Rarely they use, but mostly they have their own mechanism of logging. So this is so the package and the container log. Now one of the more important things that we need to log is the errors. So let's say when you're running a package, this is all fine when your package is successful, when your package runs successfully. Now let's say when you're running the package, an error occurs, then in that case how you will log that. So that for that what we do is we create event handlers, and we log that error in the event handler on error. So in the package, wherever the error occurs, the event handler it is like a trigger. So on error, it is triggered and it logs the error. So I'll show you how you can do that. So here it is the package. So you can set the event handler at the package level or at the executable level also. So I'll do it at the package level because the error can happen anywhere. So I will put it at the package level and then I'll log the error. So for that also, first I will use a execute SQL task and I will log the status in the package log table. So what I'll do is I'll log that here in the package log, that in the status that you see, the status is success here. So there, when there is an error, the status will be failure, and there won't be any end date time. So, and also we would log the details of the error in the error log table. So two tables we need to insert information. For the first table, what we need to do is, so here are the ETL script. So result set will be none, And here is the ETL configuration. We'll just update the table with status failure, and based on the run ID. The run ID, as we have created earlier, it's an variable. So here I'm updating the package log table. Okay, when I'm encountering an error. Also, I need to update the error log table, this table, with the error message. So for that, what I'll do is I'll insert an error. So I'll create another execute SQL task. So you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 input parameters are there. So here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 input parameters are there, and what are those 6 parameters? So if you see here, first the run ID, then the container ID, error date time will be the get date, then the container name, the package name, error code, and error message. Record insert date would be the get date. So first run ID and then the container ID. First, we need the run ID. Zero. And the container ID. Run ID, container ID. Then we have the error date time is the get date. Container name then we have, and then the package name. The package name is a system variable. So we can take the package name from here and it will be in varchar. And last is the error code and the error message. So the error code and the error message are also system variables. So system error code another parameter I require, that is the error message. Error description. So that is the error message in varchar. Yes, sorry. So these are my input parameters, which will put entry into the error log table. So if I rename this to ERR, okay. So this to execute SQL task will only be executed when there is an error in the package. So if I execute the package and if there is no error, then these won't execute. So let's say if I am executing the package and there is no error, so these two is not executed. Okay, but let's say I do something wrong and uh, I will make an error. So what I'll do is in the OLEDB destination, in the mappings, see these are all not null columns. So what I'll do is I'll put ignore. So it will try to insert null value into a not null column. So it should give me an error. So I'll run this package. See, it gave me an error. You can go to the event handler. Somehow here some issue, I think I did not. The statement is cannot in English. That is fine, but okay. An error occurred while in the copy text. That is the not null error. That is fine. An error occurred while extracting the result into a variable of type. The result set properly not turned. Acha. Okay. Okay. You go to event handler, and when you go to the error log, oh, I'm inserting this value in the error log table. So the result set should be single row, or there will be multiple rows, so it should be full result set, because 2 3 errors it generates. And if you go to the event handler, still some error is there. I think some issue with the parameter data type. I have not configured the data type properly. Let me check once. Um, Event handler, error log. So when I'm saying this is the error log table, okay? In the ETL scripts, when I'm saying run ID and container ID, so if I run the error log table, the run ID and container ID, those are int columns. Okay, so here if I go to parameter mapping, yes, this is the issue. Here it should be in varchar. Yes, these should be int and this should be in varchar. Yes, so now what the issue was that first the parameter that I said that was set to long, instead it should have been in varchar. And second thing is the output. So when you're doing, even when you're doing an insert, the execute SQL task is doing an insert statement, but it is not getting any output, right? So the result set should be none. So here, if I look now at the error log, you can see order by run ID DSC. Okay. You can see that this is the error log ID, run ID, this is the container ID, and this is the error which it has generated. If you see here, that English product subcategory column does not allow nulls. So we are trying to insert null value into a not null column. So that is why this header is occurring. Okay, now if I go to the package log, there also you will see there is one entry for this package as failure. You can see that few times I have run this order by run ID DSC. The latest one. So you can see here status is failure. So this is how you can do the logging in SSIS. I would say this is customized logging based on your requirements. Of course, if you want to use the default logging which comes with SSIS, then you can go with SSIS and logging, and you can use the different logging options available. So here you can do different logging at the each task level, and there are different log providers, and there are different the events you can select for which event, on error or on pre-execute, post-execute. So you can select which events you want to log. So these are default providers which you can use, but I have rarely seen people use the default providers because they are not that user friendly. So people don't use that much often. But if you want to use it, you can use it, or you can use the customized way of logging. So, any other questions you have regarding what we've covered till now?
So this error log we use for uh, if anything fail, that that error log will send us the message, okay, this is the error, so then we can quickly identify where it failed, something like that.
Yes, yes, right. Because see, when you have deployed the packages in your server, and let's say you are running the packages daily using some third-party tool or some SQL Server agent job, you will not have the access to open the package in say SQL Server data tools or Visual Studio and then debug it. So you will probably get the error message in the table like this, or you can ask the DBA to give you the error message if the logging is not enabled. So you'll get the error message like that, and then you have to fix the issue or debug the troubleshoot the issue accordingly. So, you might not have access to open the package in say SSDT and debug the issue. Of course, that is like very usefully if you can do that, but you will probably not have access to go into the production server and open the package in Visual Studio and then debug. So you'll have to look at the check the error message in the log table and then accordingly fix the issue in the package.
So either we can create these error logs or we can get the error message from the DBA. So what is the best practice in the industry?
So depends how you're doing the logging. Let's say if you're doing the logging this way, so obviously you will have access to the table. Like as an developer, as a support person, obviously you will have access to the log tables. But let's say you're using the default logging provided by USS, like the Windows event logging, and in the Windows event log or the text file log, they do the logging in the Windows event provider. So you might not have access to those. So for in that, it depends on how you are doing the logging. If you're doing the logging like this in a table, and probably you will have access, you won't need the DBA for that. But if you're not doing the logging like this, it depends. If you're not doing the logging in this way, then probably you will have to ask the DBA to give you the error message from the log, and then you have to troubleshoot. Depends on how you're doing the logging.
So this error handler, this database, like, do we need to create in a production, or can we create in a like a developer kind of test server kind of thing,
No,
and then set up the connection manager?
yes, yes, you can. No need to do it in production. You can do it, develop it in development environment. Only you will have to when you deploy your packages to production. So only you will have to move these to production, like the connection managers. When you deploy it, you will use the production connection manager, and this tables and database they need to be present in production also, like you
So
are.
the log tables should be in the production server.
Yes, yes, right.
Okay.
Okay, and then the connection managers that you are using, that you can always configure when you're deploying the package. You can use environment variables and change the connection managers to production. So that is not very, that is what everyone does. That is a simple thing. Okay, so any other queries you have? Okay, so I'll end today's session then. Good night, and we'll again meet tomorrow.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.